Hello, everybody. This is David Stearns with Haley Marketing, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley event. So this is one of our favorite annual events. This is where we get to tell you what we saw and heard and learned at Staffing World. And I think this year it's extra special because after basically a 2-year hiatus, we were finally back together in person with lots of people from the staffing industry, and it was awesome. So for those of you we got to see, it was great to see you. For those of you we did not get to see, hopefully we'll see you at Staffing World 2022 in Las Vegas. And today, we've got a lot of people who are going to join me as we share some highlights from what we took out of this year's Staffing World. So we'll apologize in advance for two things. Number one, we cannot do justice in 1 hour to 2.5 full days of content. So we're going to give you the highlights, but you can always go to ASA and contact them about buying the recordings if you want to see full presentations. And number two, we're going to do our best to stay on time, but we did go to a lot of sessions. And so if we may go a little long today, please forgive us. We just want to make sure we're sharing with you everything that we saw. All right. With that said, let's start moving on. All right, if you want to join along with us, you're welcome to hop on Twitter and use the hashtag Lunch with Haley, and you can reach out to our team. You can also, if you have questions, just use the go-to webinar question box anywhere during the conversation, and we will do our best to either work your questions in as we're going or recap them at the end if there's anything that we missed. All right, so we're going to kick things off, and we're going to talk about the keynotes, some great speakers at Staffing World. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Brad, you're kicking us off.
David, thank you so much. Yeah, today the keynote that I'm going to talk about was the opener from Sekou Andrews. Sekou was a school teacher turned actor and musician and also a 2-time National Poetry Slam champion. And he does a lot of work with businesses and talking about how to reach that next level. I thought it was a great way to really kick the conference off and get people excited. But he started by talking about how challenging the last 1.5 to 2 years have been because of the pandemic, because of remote work. We've really had to change the way we connect with people, and people have felt extremely distant. And he encouraged all the leaders in the room to really sit back and think about their voice, how they communicate to their teams, how they communicate to each other, and think about ways that we can close that distance, ways that we can be more apathetic, ways that we can be more understanding, ways that we can create an emotional bond between people in our organization. And as leaders, we have the power to do that. We have the power to connect people and make them feel less distant. He outlined how communicating the info that they need to succeed is important, but also we need to wrap that around a story that inspires them. Okay, we need to identify the why of what we're doing and where we're going so that people can see that vision. They're inspired by that vision. They get excited by that vision and jump on board. And then Sekou shared a story about reaching that next level. And he started off by talking about when we're young kids, that next level is really about growing and getting taller and getting out that yardstick and measuring ourselves and seeing where we're at month after month and year after year. But you hit this point where you stop growing and you don't get any taller. And he equated that to businesses. And outlined how the next level may not be that next financial goal or that sales goal, but maybe it's instead a tier. Maybe it's a team. Maybe it's coalescing and getting together and growing as a team. Maybe the next level is something that you lose and losing your fear of change and being able to adapt. So when we think about that next level, it's not all just financials. It's not all just growth. It's evolving. And then he outlined how homogenous leadership can lead to homogenous ideas and culture. And I think that is a very important fact, that if we're so stuck in our ways, if we're only leaning on the same people day in and day out, we're not going to innovate. We're not going to grow. grow. We're not going to reach that next level. So be open to different perspectives. And I think that's probably a nice segue to our next keynote. And Vicki, talk to us a little bit about that keynote and leading in precarious times.
Thanks so much, Brad. Yeah, I mean, I think that Susan Selka, the CEO of AMN Healthcare Services, she started very similarly with talking about precarious times that we're in and how it's impacted us. If you think about the impact of the pandemic, there's almost 5 million people have died. 10% of adults do not have enough to eat, and Blacks and Latinos are more than twice as likely to be affected by that. Mental health impact on adults and children is just devastating. And then on top of that, we were throwing all of the social injustice. And there's a lot of discussion now about diversity, equality, equity, and inclusion. So how can we as leaders make a positive impact? And maybe this is our defining moment. So as leaders, we bring our experiences with us. It's really important to look at the world through the lens of others and try to really understand what they're seeing and what they need. So that was a big portion of what Susan was talking about. So if this is our defining moment, how do we bring hope, optimism, and look forward to the future? How do we embrace the fact that the pandemic and social injustice changed everything and that created challenge? But from that, being challenged and uncomfortable, you're growing. So some of the key things that I took away from it was really to learn to lead with empathy, not just by the numbers. Be very vulnerable, and that makes you strong. Look through the lens of the other team members. I think I already mentioned that. Create a clear, positive vision for the future. Bring hope. And then reduce the drama. Don't add to it. Maintain a really powerful perspective. Focus on what we can control, but not what we can't. And then address issues now. Don't put it off until later. It's really important to have those hard conversations. And look for ways to have a very positive social impact. She talked a lot about being a courageous leader. Really, it's about being willing to do the right things and not just to follow the policy. Just because the policy says something doesn't mean it's the right thing at that time. Really empowering the team to do the right thing as well, making sure that people have that ability and understand that it's really important to do the right thing. Being courageous by asking questions and listening really to understand, not to respond. Speaking up when things matter to the team and having that voice and allowing them to speak and listen. And then expressing gratitude for that. And then most importantly, I think, was to default to action. Really, it doesn't matter how much you listen if you don't actually make a change. So recognize that right now, this is an infinite game. And we're here to create a culture of inclusion and be a strong leader. And this could be our defining moment. So I thought that was such a powerful message, and Susan delivered it so well. I was thrilled to be able to be at that one. I was also at the next one that David's going to talk about, and I thought it was great too. David.
All right, thanks, Vicki. And yeah, you were the lucky book winner from this presentation. This was Rita McGrath, who's a professor at the Columbia Business School, and she's an expert on innovation and growth strategy. And her talk, I did not have enough paper to keep up with taking notes, so I'm glad you got the book, Vicki. But she talked about the environment we're in, and this certainly the environment we've been in the past 2 years. And you're going to hear through a lot of today's presentation this theme of, DEI was a big theme, digital transformation was a big theme, remote work was a big theme. What these all add up to is we're in a time period that is probably, from the labor market and the staffing industry, more volatile than it's been over the last 20 or 30 years. And Rita's lesson was, if you're going to thrive in these times, you have to dig deeper than the surface of your business. And being a business school professor, she sort of opened with, when they teach strategy to business school students, or at least historically, they would teach you about determining your sources of competitive advantage. Where are we better than the people down the street? And how do we exploit those competitive advantages? And Rita's point was, today that's not enough, because your competitive advantages don't last very long. Your competition's smart, they're fast, they catch up. So competitive advantage today is really about innovation and transformation. And the way you find the ways to innovate and transform your business is to look for what she termed inflection points, things that might be creating a 10x influence on your industry. So what's an example of those inflection points? Well, the transition to remote work. It's having a 10x influence on definitely commercial buildings, commercial property, commercial real estate. It's having a maybe not a 10x impact yet on the way staffing works, but for a lot of staffing companies, I was talking to a client yesterday in IT staffing, and all of a sudden, thanks to the last 19 or so months, he's now competing with talent globally, but at the same time, he can now tackle clients just about anywhere, and he can be a successful service provider. So the inflection point of remote work has completely transformed what he can do in his business and the risks. Some other inflection points can be technology, the digital transformation of the staffing industry, or AR and VR, the mobile transformation or Uberization of not just staffing, but lots of industries where they're disintermediating. They're moving the intermediary step between the client and the consumer. So Uber did it by taking out taxi drivers. There are companies right now creating staffing platforms that are trying to take out staffing companies, and many, many staffing companies that are implementing platforms to take advantage of that trend. You can look at the world of automation, social responsibility, direct-to-consumer selling, globalization of our talent pool, and globalization of our clients. If you look at these major trends, these are examples of things that could be inflection points. And then you'll see on the screen that the next headline says snow melts from the edges. And this was Rita's big aha for business leaders is a snowflake doesn't melt from the center, it melts from its weakest point, the edges. And to find the inflection point starting to impact your business, you need to look at the periphery. What's going on at the edge of your company? What's going on at the edge of the staffing industry? And the bullets you see here that we'll walk through are, as a leader in your business, as a salesperson, as a recruiter, what can you be doing differently to find those inflection points? So do you have mechanisms that allow you to see what's going on at the edge? Do you see into the day-to-day transactions, the end customer, the end candidate? Or are you now so far removed that you're not in touch with those people anymore? Are you regularly getting exposure to diverse ideas? As Vicki and Brad both mentioned, this can be about diversity because of the characteristics of the people in your organization. It can also just be people who have contrarian views. That person who's like, I'm always just going to play devil's advocate. Well, they may be annoying in a meeting, but right now they may be more important than ever to give you different ways to look at problems. In your company, are you empowering small, agile teams who can go out and look at problems and look at the edges and find ideas for these inflection points? That's tied to having a mechanism to make little bets. Can we test concepts before we change our business? So with this Uberization of staffing and everybody putting in mobile apps, before we go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building our own app or promoting an app, are there ways to test, low-cost ways to test? Well, do our clients want to order staff through an app? Do our candidates want to engage with us through that type of an interface? Maybe we can have a progressive web app that's our website that allows them to do that before we go full-blown into creating our own Android and iOS apps. Do you as leaders, do you as salespeople, do you as recruiters regularly get out of the building, talking to the people in the branch offices, getting in the clients' offices, sitting in HR meetings, sitting in the meetings of the decision makers, the supervisors, so you can see how they're dealing with their talent challenges, their strategies for the future, because very often the best answers aren't internal, they come from outside. Are you really bringing in those diverse points of view? Which kind of goes back to the second bullet there, but are you asking people to find different ways of looking at problems? Do you reward people for suggesting different things? Or do you chastise them because they didn't agree with what the owner said? Are incentives aligned with you hearing uncomfortable news? If you're an owner, if you're a senior manager, what's it like if somebody tells you something you didn't want to hear? If they hold the mirror up and you don't like what you see, is that okay? Is that rewarded? Or is it punished? And then are you making sure you're not in denial saying, I know things will come back. we always talk about the book Who Moved My Cheese, and which is a parable of some mice that are trapped in a maze and someone has moved the cheese. Some of the mice go hunting around the maze saying, I've got to find where it's gone. While other mice say, we'll wait here. We know it'll come back. And as we have these inflection points, owners of businesses, salespeople, recruiters who are waiting for yesterday to come back, that's denial. And they may never get that opportunity. An inflection point is going to make you 10 times faster, 10 times more affordable. It will take your business to new heights if you capitalize on it, or if you miss it, your business will crash. So really powerful concepts that are right now at the core of what's going on in the staffing industry. All right, and that was the last of the keynotes. So now we're going to pivot and we're going to talk about the sessions that actually broke down a lot of these keynotes and some of the really specific topics impacting our industry. And we'll start with a big one, technology.
David, thanks so much. This was a big topic, as you had mentioned, throughout the entire conference, and it was a big talking point for a lot of the attendees. ASA, in collaboration with Talent Tech Labs, put together this great essential elements of staffing technology. Now, I know you can't read this all here on the screen. I'd encourage you to go over to the American Staffing Association website and download this. Very helpful breakdown of the full tech stack. And I'll go through this at a very high level. It starts with sourcing. So going through and looking at what job boards and what tools you're using and how you can better distribute and leverage your job board spend. And a big player here is programmatic job advertising. Think about how you can better leverage your current spend as opposed to spending more and throwing more and more dollars at the job boards. Let's use technology to make more efficient spends. And Matt Lozar from our team has been a big proponent of this and talks a lot about programmatic and recruitment advertising and recruitment marketing. There's great opportunity to drive down costs and get more applications. It looked at online staffing plays. It looked at tools to build more inbound referrals and leverage social networks. For example, Haley Marketing's career portal was featured, and they talked about the integration with Facebook Jobs and how we can take jobs and get those up on your website, pull them out of the ATS, and then get them right over to Facebook's job feed and get those applications sent back in. Great tools to speed up that process, drive more applications, and get in front of candidates that may be passive and not looking at the job board specifically. Next in the stack was talent engagement. And you're going to hear a little bit more about this later in the presentation, but a big issue we heard was no call, no shows. And it talked about how we can better engage with talent through chat, through SMS, through email, through workflows, and how we can identify gaps in our process and use technology to improve that. So it's not necessarily one-to-one human intervention. It's using technology to improve conversation, improve touch points, and become more engaged with our talent. And Jeff Stats from our team is going to talk about that in a little bit, about automation, but he had a lot of conversations with companies that purchased Sense or Herefish or another talent engagement platform and talking through workflows and journeys on how to solve that no call, no show issue for companies. Then it went on to hire and tracking systems. So are we using these tools effectively? As David just mentioned, are we looking at tools, deployment tools like Workin? Are we evolving to the online staffing play? We can't just sit there and wait for the cheese to come back. We might need to evolve. It talked about looking at analytics and data. So how are we using technology to make better educated decisions? Are we using tools like Brightfield or MZ and other data to have more strategic conversations with our clients around things like pay rate increases? Very, very vital to have. So overall, I thought it was a great session that outlined all of the technology tools that we need in our tech stack. But I just want to point out that the one item missing here, I think, is your marketing stack as well. And the two play hand in hand. We need to make sure that while we're adapting and using these technology tools to become more efficient, we need a go-to-market strategy. We need to make sure that we're clearly communicating the why to our clients and our candidates, and make sure that there's a marketing layer in this to make sure that the technology we have in place is solving a problem and we're communicating that effectively with our clients and candidates. Now, I'd like to throw it back to Vicki to talk a little bit about authentic leadership.
Thanks, Brad. So I had the good fortune of walking in to listen to Tom Gimbel, the founder and CEO of LaSalle Network, talk about authentic leadership and building a culture by knowing your employees. And this is really near and dear to my heart. This is something that I spend a whole lot of time thinking about, reading about, trying to improve in our company. And everything he said just totally resonated with me. What a great person. You can just see that he's a great leader. So one of the things he really drove home was that culture starts at the top and you get to decide what you want it to be. He made a point that, it's not on the slide, but he made this point that also resonated with me, that it's staffing companies, we get to see hundreds of companies' cultures. We get to know about different staffing companies, how they're run, how people are treated. And we have an opportunity to gather that data, to talk to the recruiters that are talking to our clients and say, what are you seeing? What can we take away from that? How can we improve things? How can we use that information to provide better staffing to make that fit work better? And his point was that we're really not doing that. And I'm gonna leave that out for you to think about it. So what his talk was a lot about culture and how perks are really not culture. So, it would be great to have an office that we all come to and, we play foosball together. Those days may be gone, but that wasn't really culture anyway. So he made a point that it used to be bringing dogs to work was the culture, but now everybody works at home and their dog's with them all day. So now it's that leader sending a text when the dog is sick or needs to go to the vet or passes. That's culture, caring about your people. Culture is that intangible feeling that's created by tangible actions. Thought that was really key. And he went on to talk about the 4 ways that culture is driven. Culture is driven by transparency and communication. It's finding the medium to connect and communicate. So that could be town halls, it could be one-on-ones, it could be coaching in the moment, it might be video messages. We do that here at Haley Marketing. It's creating two-way transparency and two-way dialogue. Super important that it's two-way, and we'll get to that a little more. It's also culture is driven by learning, growth, and development. At the beginning, Tom talked about this part, and he made this comment. Is it worth a $5,000 investment in development to hire this person? Is that person worth it? If not, you shouldn't be hiring that person. So creating training programs, learning opportunities, and mentoring programs, really important to improve your culture and to have that culture that you're looking for. Then the 2 other ones are very related: connection to team and connection to leadership, that two-way transparency. You have to keep in mind as a leader or a CEO or owner, your people are intimidated by you. You need to be aware of that. It's normal. You need to break down the barriers between them. You have to be vulnerable, be authentic. They need to know who you are, and you need to know them. It's both sides, because you're probably afraid of them too. Show your truth, that you really care. That's important. Understand that as a leader, you need to communicate differently to different groups, and you have to adjust. And be aware how you make people feel. The other side of that is they need the connection with you. So you have to be open to hearing bad news. I think David just mentioned this as well. Tom said, you gotta wanna hear bad news. And that's so true. Nobody really wants to, but if you don't ask for it and get that feedback, you don't know what's really happening on your front lines. So ask for that feedback, build trust with the team that they can come to you and tell you. Spend time with them. You don't have to make hour-long meetings and lunch, and it can be 5 or 10 minutes just to check in. People want to know how you manage your life, not just the business. So be authentic and be aware that as a CEO or a leader, people are going to tell you what you want. They think that you want to hear. Be sure that you're learning the truth. So culture comes from the top, and you really need to ask yourself, what do you want your culture to be? And I'll leave you with that and hand this off to Kelly, who's going to talk about men's roles in supporting women in leadership.
Thanks, Vicki. And this actually ties really nicely to the cultural information that you just provided, because this was a panel discussion with several female leaders and their male mentors. And the main takeaway is that you want to make supporting women in leadership roles part of your culture? And how do you do that? Well, the first thing is hire for capabilities and not just experience. Women are less likely to advocate for themselves. They won't ask or apply for a job if they don't meet all of the criteria for that job, where men may if they only meet one or two of the job requirements. So hire or promote based on capabilities and not just people's past experiences. Make sure that you're including everyone in your company. Do not allow exclusion based on sex or gender. For a great example, one of the mentors gave was that one of his team members created a fantasy football league and sent out an invite for people to join, but he only sent it to the men in the organization. And he actually called out his team member and said, I noticed you only included men. Please include everybody in the organization. As a female football fan, I love that example. Also, there's some common mistakes that men make with women and women in leadership in their companies. And number one is just treating men and women differently. In this day and age, male leaders may be uncomfortable to have closed door meetings with women in the company, so they keep the door open. But male counterparts, they may shut the door, leaving women to wonder what's going on behind closed doors. So treat them equally, keep doors open in both instances, or doors shut, or like at Haley Marketing, have a room with windows in it. Don't let women undermine themselves. Find who at the table hasn't said a word if you're in meetings. Call on them and listen to what they have to say. Another great example for the undermining themselves is when one of the female CFOs had 3 young daughters, and she was talking to her boss about how she and her husband were going to manage daycare. Do we send all 3 of them to daycare? Do we take the expense, or do I quit my job and become a stay-at-home mother? He spoke up and said, did you consider having your husband stay at home? And they hadn't. And actually, her husband ended up being a stay-at-home parent for 10 years after that conversation. So don't let the women undermine themselves in your company or in their lives. Don't always look for women to take on the traditional female roles. Don't allow them to be the note takers in the room. Make sure that you have equality there. And also participate in things that women do together, conferences and meetings and such. Even if you're uncomfortable and the only man in the room, show that that is part of the culture by action, as Vicki just said. So my main takeaways from this particular session were: have a bias for action. Make sure you're doing something to support women in leadership roles. Next to everybody across the panel said, use your voice. Ask women what they need, but women, speak up and say what you want. Additionally, find one person in your company, in your life, and amplify their voice. And don't just participate in diversity theater. Don't just support Pink for breast cancer awareness, but make it part of the culture from the top down. And from that, I will turn this over to our next presenter, who is, Vicki, I think it's you again.
Yeah, back to me. So right now, solutions for data privacy and cybersecurity. This was also a panel discussion. Joseph Dickinson, partner from Michael Best and Frederick, Jerry Grady, National Staffing Practice Leader from UHY, and Richard Peters, the principal at UHY. And this is a knowledgeable group of people. They really had me thinking about data security and cybersecurity very differently than I had before. They started off by talking about the fact that cybersecurity is data security. And that's really important, that we really find ways to secure the data that our company has. In a staffing company, that's going to be your client data and your candidate data, as well as your own office data. So the impact of a single breach on your company value is amazing. They put a couple examples up. One breach of one record one time can be a 3-year credit issue. That can cost up to $10,000 for each record compromised. Just think about that. And then if you're considering selling your business or just concerned about valuation, in mergers and acquisition, the first thing they look at is the IT and the protections around it. Lack of protection will reduce the value of the company, but excellent IT infrastructure and data privacy, if it's a priority, it'll increase the value. So you have to be very careful also of legacy systems. So unfortunately, I was not able to stay for the entire time, but I took a ton of notes, and I definitely think you should go to ASA and find this recording and listen to it. But if you think about cybersecurity and data protection as an investment, it's an asset of risk management. And you need to create that culture. We're back to culture. The culture that prioritizes the security of that data. You need to build it into your processes. You need to provide training programs and educate your team. You need to require two-factor authentication. You need to make sure everyone's running malware protection on every device that's accessing your systems. And just be aware, and this was an interesting point, a lot of us think, well, we moved it out to the cloud and I'm paying Amazon or Microsoft or some big company, so it must be secure. But if the SaaS is compromised, all the clients of that software as a service are impacted. All of the clients, not just the SaaS. So that's you, you're paying for it. You're not in control of the third parties that the SaaS uses. The hardware may be part of the service, but their security is not really securing you. So with remote work and your home PC networks, that can also pose a problem. Every employee working from home creates a risk. Scary stuff, right? So a little bit of discussion about how you mitigate risk. Third-party risk assessments, forms from your vendors, SOC assessments or testing by third parties. You can do contract terms and define who's liable for what. They may or may not hold up in court, unfortunately. And then one last example before I had to unfortunately leave to go do a podcast was think about the Target breach a couple of years ago. We're aware that Target had a breach, but are you really aware that the fault was the HVAC company? The way their contracts were written, Target had to publicly notify. So we blame it on Target, but it was really the HVAC company, and you don't even know the name of that firm. So be really aware of how this impacts your brand. So even if you're not considering selling your company right now, it's really time to make cybersecurity and data protection a priority. And again, I think there was a lot more here, but I urge you to go find that. And then I am sending this off to Susan. Susan.
Thanks, Vicki. Good luck with your podcast. So I attended a session called Building Your Personal Brand on Social Media. And this was conducted by John Ruffini, who is the Vice President of Professional Development at Health Trust Workforce Solutions. And the main theme was to be your authentic self with your social media. And we were kind of laughing about this afterward. And I know being your authentic on social media sounds kind of like an oxymoron. But his point was more that even when building yourself as a trusted business advisor and subject matter expert on social media, you should let some of your personality and real self come through. Because people work with you because of who you are, not who you work for. And you should define what you're passionate about and what drives you, and then incorporate that into your social media. So if it's something you're passionate about, creating the content is that much easier. And to use your social brand to tell that story. Adrian Dominguez, who's the CEO of the company Rolink, does a fabulous job with this. Check him out on LinkedIn. He takes something that's happening in his personal life and then ties it into a professional lesson or insight. And it really is engaging. Another point was to embrace groups, networking, connections. Don't just join a group and be a lurker. Joining a group and then soliciting business is off-putting. We've all been on the other side of that and likely won't get you anywhere. Contribute. Post insightful comments on other people's posts. Even something as simple as thanking them for their post is an easy way to engage. And then the next point was to be genuine and authentic. It's okay to show who you really are. And glimpses into your personal life are okay and do make the content a lot more engaging. And finally, if someone connects with you, build and foster that connection. Don't just accept that connection. A simple message when accepting a connection request, commenting or liking their posts, or an offer of assistance is a quick and easy way to build on those relationships. So in short, engage and engage as your authentic self. So the next session up, I also attended, and that was titled Improving Decision-Making in Critical Moments. And this session was a panel discussion with Kyle Decker from the Job Center Staffing, Beth Garvey from BGSF, and Shane Jackson from Jackson Healthcare. Some of my key takeaways were apply the values of your organization to your decisions and make sure they are aligned. And if they aren't, you either have the wrong organizational values or you are making the wrong decision. One piece of advice from Kyle was to keep it super simple and to use your moral compass and to be aware when you're overcomplicating or overthinking decisions. That's a very easy trap to fall into. And one thing I noticed, a common theme amongst the panelists was to put people first, then partners, then process. This was repeated over and over in different ways in their responses to various questions. Another common theme was to avoid decision traps and biases, such as recency and confirmation bias. I loved something that Beth said, which was the squeaky wheel shouldn't always get the grease. Loud doesn't mean right. I absolutely love that. She also made the point that too many opinions equals too much noise. And her advice was to make decisions at the top leadership level and let the next level down shoot holes in them. Then a few other quick tips. Remember to press pause and listen, and surround yourself with diverse thinkers. And finally, Shane said something that I found particularly interesting. He said that something he does is if everyone agrees, he takes the dissenting opinion, even if he doesn't agree with that opinion. And it's a great way to ensure you're getting everyone's real opinions. So now I'll turn it over to Kelly, who attended a session with one of my favorite titles ever, Pants Optional, The 5 Secrets to Remote Success.
Thanks, Susan. This was actually a great session. Similar to David at the keynote, I could not take notes fast enough, and luckily they were giving away the book at the end of the session. So this was by Chris Dwyer. He is the CEO of People G2, and he's been running his company remotely since 2009. That actually in that year was to save money on buildings and costs. So he's got years of experience doing this. What I really liked is the comment, design what you want or deal with what you get. So remote work is not going away. We all experienced it in the last 18 months or so. So what are the types of remote work to identify? And there are really 5. The digital nomad, that's the one we all know works everywhere, the airport, the pictures of them working on the beach, etc. The second type is the more common, the work from home that we've all been doing, where you have a designated desk, a space, consistency, internet access. The third type of remote is the part-time remote person, maybe who's doing a side hustle or freelance work. Off-site is another type. People who are in the field, repairmen, field techs, they've always worked remotely. And then the 5th type, our new favorite word, the hybrid remote. Some days in the office, some days at home, some people in the office, some people at work from home or different areas of the country. And this is actually the hardest to do. So hybrid, his advice is hybrid is still remote in practice. So if you've got some people in the office and some people working from home, everybody should still be on a Zoom call, not some people in a conference room and some people on Zoom. The other advice was to regroup for now, to group your remote employees by types. For instance, singles, people who are single, they initially liked working from home. They found the peace and quiet and being productive, but then soon they were overdoing it and they became stressed and they had lack of contact and overwork and boredom. And the solution that People G2 came up with, they were coaching them about their conversations and their needs for each one of these group types. And for the singles, they wanted to connect. They wanted the Zoom happy hours and different team builders to help get that reconnection with their teammates. Couples who are working from home were similar to singles. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but couples with kids at home, all of a sudden had kids at home, and they had different needs. And with family being home, their bandwidth was gone, literally and figuratively. So the solutions, this particular group needed flexibility in their work schedules to help with children and homework and schoolwork. They needed their Wi-Fi capabilities increased, literally, to help with the bandwidth. So, and the invites to the happy hours and team builders were stressing them out more because it just added more for them to do. And then there's also the multi-generational homes where maybe grandparents are also living in the home. And that's similar needs to couples with kids, but they had someone to help with the homework and the kids during the day. Another thing to do is what is working. Ask your team what is working. We're doing quarterly surveys for employee eNPS scores, but they recommend doing it weekly, just one question a week. It increases your response rate because people have time to just answer one question rather than try to answer a full survey. It also avoids the recency effect of what maybe the mood or this or that. 52 questions, and then you have 52 answers and 52 questions to respond to and act on at the end of the year. Another recommendation is to create signposts. We lost visual clues to understanding people's moods and feelings once we got on Zoom. You're not in the room with them, and you don't have those nonverbal cues. So create a check-in during meetings. Know when it's time to collaborate, when it's time to brainstorm, and when it's time to blow off steam. And to do that, it's create better meetings and have better meetings. One recommendation was to stop having one-on-one meetings regarding projects and client work. Invite others. Who else can learn or be impacted by the discussion or can provide value to your discussion? The senior team, the CEO was actually meeting with each team member individually. Now they have one meeting. Stop having long video meetings. Be on video to start, but turn off the video when you get underway and just let people be on camera. They call it no mascara day, where you don't have to be on camera one day a week. Curate your meetings. Make sure your meetings start on time. They end on time. If you don't have an agenda, you don't have a meeting. Create bonding moments. Slow down. Connect. Make sure you're asking your team, how are you showing up? How are you leaving your meeting? And make sure the leaders go last, because if you get into your meeting and you're like, I'm having the best day ever, this is great, I've got XYZ, your team isn't going to speak up about any concerns or how they're really feeling in that moment. And then there was a whole bunch of create meeting types, and I'm not going to go into the different ones, but the one I really liked was called tsunami planning, where you actually taught your other team leaders how to run meetings. So it was just a fake meeting, but how to run the meeting. And then there were 5 secrets to remote success, but I thought there was a bonus 6th one that I loved, and it's disconnect. They were finding that people did not want to take their vacations because they didn't want to deal with the work before and after, and I know I am guilty of this. So they had it, if you are wired, you are fired while you are on vacation. They implemented the emails are deleted during vacation time. That's what your message is. That doesn't mean that you're dropping everything. It means your team members are helping you pick up the slack and pick up the work while you're out. You leave a team member in charge. When you get back, you meet with your team. They can identify the 1 or 2 things that you really need to know, and they actually, right up to the CEO, screen share, and your team watches as you delete all of your emails from your vacation. So those are the 5 secrets that I got for remote success. And I'm going to now turn it over to Brad for where are they bringing the talent back to the workforce?
Thanks so much, Kelly. This session was really focused on the talent shortage and that all of us are dealing with. And there was debate on whether or not there was actually a talent shortage. And the debate really came in thinking a little bit differently and changing our perspective and mindset. So yeah, there's a talent shortage, but the issue might not be with finding talent. It might be an issue with how we nurture talent. And I saw a recent statistic that said in the staffing industry, we might redeploy as low as 8% of our talent. That means 92% of the people that we spent all that time, energy, and money recruiting in the first place leave after one assignment. there's a huge opportunity for us to nurture that talent so that we don't have to deal with finding as much talent. Then we need to talk about transferables. So there truly is an exact match shortage, but we need to do a better job of having conversations with our clients about the transferables and discuss what the non-negotiable and the trainable versus non-trainable skills are, and really dig deep into those job descriptions. There was big upheaval in the hospitality and retail industry, but a lot of those people had great and amazing transferable skills, and we need to be able to better tell that story and match people in different careers. And then there was big talk about making entry level truly entry level. In many job descriptions, we'll see a position explained as entry level and then require 2 years of experience. That's an oxymoron. That can't happen. We need to have those conversations about what entry level truly is. And then finally, there was some amazing discussion from the panelists about looking at overlooked talent pools. And one panelist was the founder of Mom Relaunch, where they look at moms that have been out of the workforce for several years. They go through a program to train them on IT skills. Many enter with no IT skills whatsoever and end up being amazing programmers after a 6-month to a year stint. There's great opportunity there for reskilling. And then Kelly Discover really hit home, and they looked at the autism spectrum, and that's an often overlooked or skipped over segment of the population. Many people on the spectrum don't interview well, and they don't get jobs because of that, but they're degreed. They can focus for a long period of time. They have amazing attention to detail. They can do repetitive tasks. So it's looking at what positions really require those type of skills, and then working with employers to possibly change their interview and their onboarding process to be more open to that. And now I'm going to transition it over to Jeff, and I think this is a good segue because, Jeff, I'd love to hear about automation and how maybe that can help with redeployment and making better connections with our talent pools.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I think this was a really good session. I mean, over the last couple of years, it seems like automation has been the dominant theme across all of the staffing conferences and even in other industries. And I think this one was really powerful. Pankaj Jindal, co-founder of Sense, put it on. So it is very sense-based, but I thought he did a great job because what I think is missing in a lot of these is we get very much into the theoretical or philosophical side of automation, but not into the practical side. So I think, with this one, he really went through and broke down basically 4 candidate buckets where automation and AI can help you, and both help you tap into underutilized channels, as well as accelerating those time-sensitive processes. Because as we all know, if you're not really staying relevant, and candidates are going to know, candidates are going to see it, candidates are going to understand that, maybe you aren't creating a good experience for them. So, what Pankaj really did was break down these best practices, and I'll go through each of the 4 buckets plus the bonus one. But what I thought was really interesting is he kicked everything off and said there's 2 truths that are happening right now. Number one, it's a candidate's world. And it's not just a candidate's world in terms of, yes, they can leave a job for a better paying job, or they can work whenever they want to. That's definitely part of it. But it is, the old marketing adage of the right message to the right person at the right time. They control how they consume, this relationship with their recruiter or with the hiring manager. So if you are not utilizing those channels, you lose. The second truth that, he really put out there, and I'm sure it was self-serving in a way, was that, automation is no longer an option. And I think, that is very, very understandable. I mean, the room was filled with people in this session. And so you're talking about a couple hundred people that really understand that they're all in different ranges of their automation journey. So I thought that was really great to see, because again, it really is transition. I think I have a takeaway later, where, I mean, really that is the truth, is that you're seeing that automation is now, it's got to be part of your tech stack. It's got to be part of your marketing message and your marketing stack. So, what Pankaj does is really break down, and what I really like is he first, in the discover section of it, and this is really where, leveraging your ATS, leveraging the people that are already in your database versus having to go spend more money. All we think about on the Discover side and finding people to fill jobs is we need to fill the top of the funnel. Well, there's this whole middle side of the funnel that, you may have a couple 100,000 candidates in your database already. So how do we leverage that? How do we look at inactive? And we do reactivation campaigns. We look at re-engagement and even tying into redeployment. And the whole point, again, is to save money and also to save time. Recruiters tend to get a job order out. They tend to look at whoever first applies and they move on, but we can help them out so much by leveraging automation and getting and queuing up those candidates that are already in that database that may be interested in the job, and really using chatbots, to pre-qual and doing a lot of that stuff. So that was really great. And Pankaj put up, what I thought was interesting is that recruiting steps, according to Sense, has 26 steps. Their automation right now can reduce it to 11. And then the hope is, are you able to reduce all of the steps in the recruiting process to 1 or 2? And I think that was such a powerful message, because I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for automation and AI to even get in there. Next bucket was engage, and that is really looking at triggers and how do you keep your candidates engaged and your database clean throughout the process of the interviewing process into onboarding. Third being onboarding, where they're talking about integration with the other tech stack partners, your onboarding platform, back to the ATS, maybe an app if you're using like a work-in or time saved, and looking and leveraging two-way texting. And then the final one is retain, which is looking at, can you redeploy? Can you use AI job matching? Can you look at referrals, strategic referrals, and be able to bring people, if they're a great candidate that just ended an assignment, how do you bring them back in the workforce? Then how do you find others like them? The bonus one was sales. So leveraging, automation is not just for candidates, it's for sales as well. And he gave some best practices around how do you create, powerful drip campaigns for the prospecting. And then the two final ones that I thought were funny, one came through a question, which was, somebody asked about, should candidates care that they're talking to a chatbot? And now Gen Z, they know it. And I thought that was interesting, is we care so much about the verbiage, and we don't want to sound so robotic, and oh my God, we're sending things out on via chatbot. Candidates know they're talking to a chatbot. They get it. If they want the job, they'll go through the process. And then finally, on the integration side, is we got to move from this integration. I think you're talking about experience, and so it's not just integration partners or tying tech together, but it's about leveraging the whole experience. So I think right now I'm talking or throwing it back to Brad, I believe.
Thanks, Jeff. And Eric Gregg, who led the next session, shared a stat that I think ties into what you just talked about, that redeployment and rehiring and reactivation. He had said that when we need to rehire, and if we can rehire, it saves us considerably. The cost to go out and recruit new talent is maybe $600 to $1,200 on average. So if we can redeploy and rehire those people, we're going to save ourselves a lot of money and provide a better experience both to the candidate and to the client. And that's what this session was really all about. Eric does great in sharing data and then wrapping it up at the end. So I've got 2 slides here. And first, Eric suggested that we consistently use the Net Promoter Score to measure our client and candidate satisfaction. And one of the biggest reasons is that detractors, so people who would not recommend you to a friend or colleague, are 56% more likely to churn. Those are employees that are going to leave. Those are clients that are going to leave. We need to know who they are, and we need to fix that. Unhappy talent is almost 2 times more likely to quit. Maybe more importantly, 2 times more likely to get fired. So we're not providing a great candidate or client experience if we have unhappy talent. Average job seekers using 6.4 resources during a job search. We can't rely on just one job tool. We need to mix in many into our recruitment strategy. And one of those is looking at reviews. The importance of reviews is 2 times what it was just a few years ago. And the majority of talent today, 7 out of 10 people, are using reviews to determine the quality of a staffing agency. So after this, go and see what people are saying about your staffing company and build a proactive plan, and hint, use some technology to help to build those reviews? How powerful would it be to go to the market and saying we are the most reviewed and highest reviewed staffing and employment agency in this market? That's why you want to come work for us. And then Eric mentioned that Gen Y is the largest segment of the workforce at 40% right now. Within our own companies, within internal staff and staffing agencies, it's 75%. They aren't our future. Millennials are our present. So let's look for ways to work more effectively there. And then Eric went on to share a 10-step process to improve experience. I won't go through all these in detail, but one, getting senior level commitment. Let's make sure that the leaders in our organization are bought in. CX, customer experience, not an expense, it's an investment. If you invest in it, it will pay dividends. Process often isn't the problem, it's how we execute it. We need to celebrate our successes. We need to measure our consumer experience across all levels, but look to keep it simple. We need to decide as an organization if we're relationship-based or if we're transactional. We need to look at surveying our clients and candidates, but we can't settle for a low response. We need to get out there and hit those people consistently. Engage the field. The right solution only matters if it's in time. So don't wait on advancements. Analyze bottom up, not top down, and then focus on service excellence and start internally. Now I'm going to wrap up our session talk here and talk a little bit about the convergence of staffing and technology. Staffing platforms are changing the landscape, and they outlined how a lot of people in our industry use the phrase, that will never work. We're a people business. We can't go to online staffing. That will never work. Well, Blockbuster said the same thing. Blockbuster could have bought Netflix for $50 million. They didn't. Now they're out of business. So we need to look at how technology is impacting our relationships, both on the talent and the client side. We can't be blind to that. And where technology really comes into play is in extremely dissatisfied industries. So you look at Blockbuster, people were dissatisfied with that experience. Look at taxis, people were dissatisfied with that experience. When there's dissatisfaction, it's ripe for disruption. Placed talent right now and across our industry has an NPS score of just 18. Unplaced talent is negative 45. We are ripe for disruption. So are you going to be part of that disruption, or are you going to be disrupted? We need to make that decision. We need to look to reduce time to fill and increase quality. We need to think through the framework of using and converging staffing and technology. Think about what the core problem is, ideate and try to solve the problem. And then we need to make sure that we never stop iterating. We need to continue to improve. More and more people are out there asking for this tech. If the majority of the market is asking for the tech, it's already too late. And again, our satisfaction scores are ripe for disruption. So it's not that phrase, that will never work. It's how do we make that work and how do we improve the experience for our candidates and our clients. And now, David, I'd like to pass it back for a wrap up and some lessons learned.
Excellent. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everybody. My head's spinning again as if it wasn't spinning badly enough while we were at Staffing World, because you guys were able to present a lot of the stuff that I was not able to go see. So thank you very much, and I hope everybody listening today is enjoying these lessons from the sessions. But we're going to wrap it up talking about the take-home lessons that we had attending this year. And we're going to start with one of our first timers at Staffing World. So Kathy, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on your first Staffing World.
Sure, thanks. And that was a lot of great information and session takeaways. So thank you everybody for sharing. For me, it was my first Staffing World convention, actually the first staffing convention ever. And I found it to be quite the experience. It started with a fantastic keynote speaker, Sekou Andrews, who really had the room supercharged with his emotional and thought-provoking presentation. And then ultimately it was the people. There was energy and excitement vibrating throughout the sessions and the hall, which was really neat. There were so many smiling and happy faces. It was evident that everyone missed the face-to-face interactions. And for one quick second, the world felt like it was back to normal. For me, I personally love meeting people that I've spoken to over Zoom in real life. That was awesome. But overall, the event demonstrated that we have a great resiliency in the staffing industry, and that we can adapt and pivot in the face of challenges. some of the things I learned or confirmed what I thought I knew is that there was a theme of a new way of thinking. So I think Brad had mentioned before, candidate shortage. Where are they? Everybody was looking for candidates, and they were eager to learn new strategies and open to new ideas. And so as the recruitment marketing strategist here at Haley Marketing, I felt super popular, and I enjoyed sharing multi-pronged approaches to capture and engage candidates. I also learned that there are so many different types of staffing technology to help improve communication and to provide a better customer experience. And of course, using that technology together in a very streamlined and efficient way. It is about tech. Again, those were the buzzwords, tech stack and automation. But more importantly, it's about people too. So it's important to use the technology, but be human and connect. One of the sessions I slipped into was the tech stack one. And they talked about what if there was a world without resumes? And I love this because I never thought about it that way. But they shared a TikTok video of a girl, I think her name was Resume Girl. And the video was under a minute long. She shared all of her qualifications. And behind her, as she talked, it flashed all of her work that she had done. Her video went viral, and she had thousands of different responses. So she found a new way to differentiate herself amongst her competition. And so that provided some food for thought for me on how video would affect the rest of our industry, especially since we're in a time where people communicate mostly by video. But for next time, I definitely want to attend more sessions. One, so you can hear my voice on the call next year. I was very busy in the booth meeting people face to face, but I would love the opportunity to sit and listen to more sessions. And then I also learned you can be on your feet all day. So don't wear heels to the evening events. And I'm going to pass this back to Brad. We're looking forward to hearing what you learned as well.
Thanks so much, Kathy. For me, it was all about no call, no show. The back of our booth really hit the nail on the head and sparked a lot of conversations. Our booth had, "Are you tired of dealing with no calls, no shows?" And a lot of people really were. We shared some tips today on how you can overcome that. And I'd like to encourage everybody to listen to Secrets of Staffing Success, our podcast. And the latest episode digs into this problem a lot more. And then the convergence of tech and staffing is here, in case you didn't notice that from today's webinar and the sessions that we're at Staffing World, has been for a few years now. We need to jump on this and take advantage now before it's too late. Upskilling and training can be a great attraction and retention tool, can be a great way to reduce our recruitment costs too and be more profitable as staffing companies. And then finally, there's no such thing anymore as a sustainable competitive advantage. The ability to change is a competitive weapon, and that's where we need to focus. We need to change to stay relevant. We need to create a culture and make sure that people aren't fearful of change, and we need to paint that picture for them of what change looks like for them, why it's so important, and how it will help them in their careers. And then last but not least, small organizations, you have an advantage right now. You can adopt and adapt more quickly. And you can use that ability to change quickly as a competitive weapon to level the playing field. And Susan, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, thanks, Brad. So looking back and forward. So looking back, the staffing industry, we really had an opportunity over the last 18 months to show the world the valuable role we play. The value has always been there, but COVID really provided a stage for the rest of the world to make that realization. So I guess that's a positive that comes out of COVID. Educating clients on the benefits of upskilling and training will take that value to the next level. I lost count of the number of conversations I was in that revolved around upskilling. And then automating the repeatable tasks is going to be key to survival and growth. Dedicate resources to not only the implementation of your automation tools, but the ongoing improvements. And I know Jeff is all on board with that. The set it and forget it mentality should never apply to your automation. And then we were there. I've been to more staffing worlds than I will admit to here. This year, everyone was so excited to be back, as Kathy said, and in person. The energy level this year was higher than I've ever seen it. The sessions were fantastic, but having in-person conversations with the attendees and vendors in person was even more fantastic. Some of the most insightful conversations I had were with people I had met at lunch or at an after hours event. Basically people who I wouldn't run into in the normal course of my day, which is a valuable asset of attending Staffing World. And finally, if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, please remember this, and I can't stress the importance enough. If you are at Staffing World and it is boxed lunch day, eat early or you will be left with the soggy vegetarian wrap. So Jeff, I'll pass it to you. What were your lessons learned this year?
Go to the sports bar, but go to the off hours and don't wait in line versus eating the box lunch.
I was not that smart.
You have to. I mean, I said a couple of these before. I mean, a couple key takeaways. Automation is no longer an option. It's a must-have because it's a candidates market. I think what's great is, through the conversations that, we've had at the booth and at, the different events, it's still new, but the demand is expanding. So, I mean, more people are asking, more people are wondering. I think you have less contemplating whether they should add the platform. You have more people that have the platform that are in that, I don't know what I don't know. And I think that's what you're seeing is that staffing companies, large and small, are in the same boat where education is going to be key right now. Teaching them, and again, that's why I love the session where it was more of a best practice how-to. Education on how to use the tech that they have is just, it's going to be key. And really, one of the things I always say is build your processes first and then find ways to automate if you're going to do that. The second one was that experience has a quantifiable value and impact. I thought that was a great phrase, is that, experience usually is measured in NPS or a customer sat, but it's now starting to have, really that impact that you want. And you want to look at engagement and, you want to be able to reduce the steps. It's kind of what we talked about in websites where it's reduce the clicks. With recruiting and how you're getting somebody over into an assignment is reduce those steps, use automation to do that. What I thought was great was I talked about they know that they're getting a chatbot, is that the candidate satisfaction rating for chatbot for Sense users through that session was 95% satisfaction. So they understand it, they know it, and they're doing it. And finally, the best candidates are gone within 7 days. So when you look at when a candidate, whether you're redeploying or whether they're just out there and they apply, the best candidates, your MPCs, are gone in 7 days. So engagement is a must to keep them informed, excited, and ready to take that assignment. I think I'll throw it over to Kelly now.
Thanks, Jeff. So what I learned this year is there were growth opportunities during the pandemic. As much as the world turned upside down, it did require that staffing had different conversations that led to new growth opportunities, whether it be healthcare or temperature takers. Diversity and inclusion is more important than ever. And it's not just ethnic diversity, but it's diversity by sex, by LGBTQ representation. And as we've already mentioned, that was displayed throughout the keynote speakers and a lot of the session topics. I know I'm not going to elaborate, Susan's already mentioned it, but Kathy mentioned it, everybody's mentioned it. Being in person was awesome, and just creating those relationships, being at the booth, it was nice to meet clients and other vendor partners. I think everybody was just excited to have a little bit of that normalcy. There's the old adage in marketing, puppies and babies sell, and boy, do they. ASA Cares had Pavana, a group of rescue puppies, and that was, I think, the most popular attraction during the entire expo hall floor. And then I hate the term new normal, but that is a new normal. It's a changing workplace, and remote is here to stay. How are you going to make that work for you and for your clients and your candidates? And then candidates. Recruiting tactics are more diverse than ever. So you need to find out what draws candidates to a job, how to attract them, and how to keep them and redeploy them, as Jeff just mentioned. And then change and flexibility. Not only did the start of the pandemic require really quick pivoting, but as states put mandates in place, or are going to put more mandates in place or vaccine requirements, staffing must be ready to adjust and have those conversations with clients and with their candidates. And with that, Vicki, if you're still around, I think
I'm still here. Not sure why everybody thinks I'm leaving. No big deal. I'm here. But I'll wrap this really quickly because it's 3:09 and we're way over, and that's a pet peeve of mine. But for me, my biggest takeaway was that everything changed and everything stayed the same. So you've heard everybody talking. I'm not going to go into deep detail here, but the industry has been really impacted by the pandemic and social injustice and DEI. A lot of discussion about that and culture, improving and looking through the lenses, surrounding yourselves with diverse thinkers, and just a lot of optimism for the future and hope, but it's been changed. Technology, automation, apps, oh my. Tech stack and so many tech conversations. I probably spent half of the time at Staffing World talking tech, which is not necessarily new, but the tech we're talking about is new and it is changing things. And then lastly, podcasting live from an expo hall. Wow, that was interesting. Nothing like people walking by and waving or somebody deciding to roll tables by as you're in the middle of a conversation and trying to really stay focused. But I think it went well and I hope you'll give it a listen. But then everything stayed the same. The content, it's been probably 5 years since I've been to a Staffing World, and the content was amazing, just like it has been in the past. It's always really great, and maybe even more great this year, to have face-to-face conversations, to meet old friends, and then make new friends, talk to vendors, talk to clients. Really a great time. And then I think I say this every single podcast episode. It always comes down to staffing is a people business. And yeah, the technology and the automation and the pandemic and everything that's around, but that does stay the same. We are about people. We are about making a positive impact in people's lives, helping work get done and helping to create careers. And I'm really proud to be a part of that. Hey, David, do you want to wrap it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Vicki. And yeah, I'll second the live podcasting. It's tough, but fun. It was the first time ever we've taken our podcast on the road. Big thanks to our guests, John Reed McDonald, Amy Lynn from Pride Staff, Bradley Bach from Staffing the Universe, probably the greatest company name ever, Amy Geisinger from Doherty, and Scott Moorfield from Luttrell. Big thanks to them. We learned so much from the conversations when the tables weren't rolling by, and I'm not really good about staying focused. But some of the things we talked about, to solve the recruiting challenges that you have, build communities with your talent, not just recruit, but truly build communities with them. With all the technology available today, kind of building on what Vicki just said, it's important to make people feel that you care. I think Jeff mentioned it earlier. It's about creating an experience, not about the technology. Growth in staffing company happens when you build a great culture and you're deliberate about encouraging diversity of thought. That was something we learned from Brad. And marketing has really evolved from when Haley Marketing started 25 years ago to being just a nice way to do brochures and support to salespeople, to now it really impacts all parts of the business, leadership, sales, recruiting. And when we talked to Amy and Scott, they really reiterated on how staffing plays a strategic role in leading where the organization is going. And my other takeaway, do more by doing less. I always do this at Staffing World. I do this a lot of things in life, is I put too many things on my personal agenda. I'm overly ambitious. My eyes are bigger than my stomach. And that divided attention can mean you miss out on some of what matters most. And there were a lot of great sessions that I missed because I got focused on being in two places at the same time. So for anybody, when you're doing something important, limit the plan to your top priorities. It's a great lesson for Staffing World and in life. All right, I want to thank everybody for sticking around. If there are questions, shoot them to us. We're not going to keep everybody on today's webinar longer. One thing I do want to mention, though, is if you didn't attend our 25th birthday party back in August, we had an amazing day of webinars. We had 14 sessions over 7 hours, and we recorded everything. Fantastic content. The feedback has been unbelievable. And it's all available now. Anytime you want to listen to it, just go to haleymarketing.com/25bash, and all the recordings are there for you. And last but not least, our next webinar is next Monday, and it's actually a product demo. We're going to be doing a little show and tell on what we're doing with staffing websites in 2021 and some of the things we're going to be doing as we build staffing websites, or really digital branch offices, for 2022 and beyond. All right, from all of us at Haley Marketing, I want to thank everybody so much for being part of today's Lunch with Haley event. We look forward to seeing you on future webinars and hopefully listening in on our Secrets of Staffing Success podcast. Have a great day, everyone.